Do not be too hasty entering that room. I had Taco Bell for lunch. Pokémon!
Do I really have to fucking explain Pokemon? One of, if not the most popular grossing media franchises in the fucking planet. Remembered for its wondrous variety of Pokemon, crafting the team of your dreams and going on a magical Pokemon adventure, killing God himself, sharing and playing with friends and loved ones. Experiencing the wonders in the franchise in many ways, being its mainline game. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Oh yeah, or the side games where you. Yikes. Oh, but let's not forget the most expansive card game. Fuck. Okay, let's stop sucking on the cucumber here. Over the past recent years, Pokemon has been in a rough position, to say the least. And that's me sugarcoating it so much that a diabetic person within 30 yards would fucking die instantly. And this is coming from someone who is more neutral when it comes to the Pokemon franchise entirely. I didn't grow up with Pokemon as much as everyone else did as a kid. I was a child that was enriched in the most civilized taste, but I had a solid foothold on the franchise. My first ever Pokemon game was Gen 5, the best generation ever. Bite me. Though I 100% understand and respect the bigger hill being Gen 4. But joke's on you, I grew up with a game that didn't make me afraid of the fucking piano. Me and my friends dabble with Pokemon from time to time, and as of right now, I still carry a binder of classic Pokemon cards I collected from like 20 years ago, which to any Pokemon card collectors who end up seeing this, let me know in the comments if I'm casually sitting on a small gold mine here with these. Holy shit! What have you been feeding that monstrosity? And don't get me started on Ash. That mouth and eyes look like they're held together on his head with a piece of crumpled up scotch tape. But kick! Twisted! Bop it! TLDR, Pokemon games have been lacking a certain key component over the recent years, and that key component is fucking quality. Because in recent years, at least in my point of view, this component started to nosedive after Gen 7 being Pokemon Sun and Moon, when Sword and Shield came out. I know some fans of the series will say that Generation 6, being X and Y on the 3DS, was where the degrade started, but if that were the case, Generation 6 and 7 was a slow burn kind of trouble, while Generation 8 and after that was basically the definition of swan diving, somersault backflipping into a pool filled with prostitute urine. Now the reasons and discussion as to why Pokemon is in the current state that it is all over the place. Managing new engines / software and hardware limitations, Nintendo cracking the whip harder than daddy's belt when he catches you having fun, Game Freak being lazy as shit, though seeing that one game that they're working on outside of Pokemon look actually good, I think that last theory is a little busted, but yada yada. And the fan bases aren't any better. The Pokemon community, the actual fans, keep in mind, not these creatures you call human, is very devoted. And I mean in the same way as Star Wars fans or hell, general politics if we're going outside the boundaries a bit. And if you know how fan bases like those go, you know there's a good chunk of people in there that are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. However, unlike most fan bases, where the nutcases take up like 10-20% at best, crazy Pokemon fans take up at least like 40 if not half of the entire community. And that's me being very loose and very generous. Now granted, most of that percentage is mainly because of the Nintendo fanboys, which doesn't make it as much better as it is. And ever since Nintendo and Game Freak have managed the Pokemon franchise the way that it has over recent years, has sparked the form of a civil war. You got Nintendo and Pokemon fanboys that are sucking on their cock so hard it's practically a competitive sport at this point. And on the other end, you got Pokemon fans who believe that they deserve better with the money and time that they committed to the franchise. However, this war led to a dilemma that seemed practically hopeless, where at the end of the day, Nintendo will just be like, why bother trying? They'll buy it anyway. And that's the case! Despite the most recent mainline release being the way that it is, buggy, ugly, and borderline broken, it broke records. And what are they gonna do? Go to other games? Sure, emulations exist, but that's still Pokemon. There's no other kind of game like Pokemon out there that does what they do best. Capitalize on the monster catching franchise with an iron grip. That was until these fuckers showed up. And all hell broke loose.
With
whether we wanted it or not.
Palworld has become a cultural phenomenon that nobody, and I mean nobody, expected to blow up the way that it did. So in case you don't know the story, first of all, what rock have you been living under? Like, it sure and shit ain't Patrick's rock. Can I join you? Like, I'll bring homemade cookies. A quick summary. Palworld popped out of fucking nowhere around January 2024 in far early access, and saying that it blew up in popularity would be putting it very mildly. It broke charts, both Steam and Xbox, and most of it being popular was because it was the answer that many of the Pokemon fans desperately needed. Something fresh, something new, something fun. Becoming actual competition, something that Pokemon honestly needed. So how did Pokemon respond? By trying to assassinate it. What started with Pokemon and Nintendo fanboys throwing shade at the game for challenging their precious, fragile franchise, calling them lazy, knockoffs, and just straight up plagiarizing on their monsters. But hold on, who says there can't be Pokemon clones if not games inspired by Pokemon? It's not like Pokemon is the only monster catching game by law. The reason why there's not a lot of monster catching games out there is because you'd be facing an absolute god in that market. Some games in that market tried and faded to obscurity, so Nintendo tried to make it law by trying to sue them over patents that they had the rights to the mechanics that were similar to Pokemon. You know, mechanics like hundreds of games do. But this one used balls because that's the main factor, right? Slight problem. The patents are full of shit. Not only, as I mentioned before, that many of the patents that are being used to sue against Palworld are similar mechanics to many games out there, which could cause a lot of problems for a lot of people. But the biggest problem is that how is it okay to sue someone for patents that are younger than the fucking game you're suing? If it wasn't obvious, Nintendo was desperately trying to pull a Nemesis moment.
Just for context,
A game called Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor and its sequel, Shadow of War, carried a unique gameplay system mechanic called the Nemesis system. TLDR, it was a mechanic that made the game stand out in its own way like nobody else did. And Warner Brothers patented that mechanic, making it so that they are the only ones that are able to use that game mechanic, which they choose to sit on and do absolutely fuck all with. By making these patents, Nintendo was focusing on one factor: control. They wanted to be not only the only monster catching games in the entire gaming industry, but they wanted to dictate on what other games can or can't do when they try to make games that are somewhat similar, or have mechanics that are even remotely close to the mechanics that they are patenting, which can easily cause so many problems to a lot of games, even ones you think have no connection to Pokemon whatsoever. And people had every right to be worried. Nintendo is basically the Disney of gaming when you think about it. They're one of the mighty kingpins of that type of media. They are so protective over their IPs, they would sue a child if it were possible. And even though they make amazing games, their business department are literal assassins. Pokemon can easily get away with this, knowing how their track record is and their resources.
2 years later.
They did not get away with it. Their patents failed. Legal cases obsolete. And as of the posting of this video, Nintendo's best case scenario, when this is all over in October or November, is winning $30,000 in damages. Now that may sound like a lot, yes, but compared to God knows how much those Nintendo lawyers cost after 2 whole years of fighting, no matter how you look at it or how things go, they definitely got the shit end of the stick. Even though it's a bit premature since the case is technically still ongoing, many people celebrated, because for what it feels like for the first time, Nintendo lost. Which is something that is so rare that its unicorn levels are rare. And now they have what they themselves created due to their greed and hubris. Actual competition. So with Palworld keeping its mark on the world, and it has now finally made it to its full release, and oh boy, does it feel good to play this game again.
I don't know what that is.
I blinked. Did you just fucking murder a child? Oh! Don't do that! Oh my god! There was nothing but Kyle's face on my screen! I dare you.
It's so adorable though.
Yeah, I dare you. Did you just kill his pal? I didn't realize you could do that. Read the face,
Well, I mean, I got the souls from the chest that I got. Whoa! Fucking.
This one, I don't think this will do enough. Shit!
Did you fucking... Dalton! You monster! Also, you probably noticed that there's also footage of just the previous version. I decided to play the game again because, like, I wanted to have a save file on hand for when I just wanted to explore it on my own free time and wanted to see if I could find any tricks and tactics to make things easier for grinding when we do play the 1.0. You know, like a fucking nerd. So for Palworld's case, I want to talk about the main points that set Palworld apart from what Pokemon would not even consider touching with a 10-foot pole. Ever since the last time I played it back in the beginning of 2025, a lot has changed that made it kind of its own thing now. And it was especially impressive considering how at the same time they were trying their best to try to make 1.0 while literally reenacting David versus Goliath. Keep in mind this isn't me reviewing the game. There are dozens of people who kept tabs on the lawsuit and how Palworld stands out and its importance in the monster catching franchise. This is just me throwing my hat into the ring, so take it with a grain of salt. Point number 1. It has its own level of charm. Pokemon has some edgy moments with some of its lore and stories, yes, but Palworld just has straight up slavery. There's little to no restrictions, no omnipotent being telling you don't do that, you sick fuck. They'll say that, but that's not stopping you. You could go into a village and capture every pal and human in that village and keep them all in your base, all for the sake of convenience. And you can't tell me Pocket Pair doesn't have a sense of humor when it comes to its pals, both in design and the lore of said pals. Most of the lore in Pokemon are just facts, along with the exception being, oh, this little balloon has a reputation for kidnapping children. Yeah, that's pretty creepy and dark. Now let's take a look at a couple lore of some pals, and I think this bloke explains it best.
This is called Hang You. Its very existence is a threat to your neck. Its gigantic arms can rip apart even iron. As a particularly cruel form of execution, serious criminals would be struggled in a public square, and a Hang You would tear the skin right from their bones. Here we have a mini penguin. Here we have a big penguin. One after each other in the old index, surprisingly unrelated to each other.
Point 2. It has an entirely different experience. You're not going on a whimsical PG-rated adventure, you're surviving as a stranded nobody, forging a home and a team to survive. You're making a base of operations, using pals to craft weapons and armor so you can survive the world and more powerful pals that you can catch yourself to make things easier in your base. It's a repetitive loop. Even though the whole base building survival shtick has been done 100 times, having your pals that you catch help build your base and using their strengths and weaknesses to manage your base's efficiency is such a satisfying addiction that weirdly feels fresh. Especially for someone who's too retarded to handle more complex base building games such as Factorial or Satisfactory. And when it comes to the pals themselves, let me tell you, personally, I love a good handful of Pokemon in both type and design, but I rarely had a situation where I had to debate on who or what Pokemon I would have on my team. Sure, I debate on which typing and team management, but outside of that, I didn't really think that hard. In Palworld, it's a fucking all-out war. I constantly fight myself on which pals I want to have on my dream team, regardless of utility or not. Even with all the utility you can have with your pals, such as riding wolves, birds, or traversing, or gliding, or whatever. You know it's crazy when a roster that, as of today, doesn't even take a quarter of the roster of all the Pokemon that exist, and yet I debate more on who to have on my 5-man squad in Palworld says a lot. Well, 4, because there's always a spot reserved for my precious partner Catrix. I'm a cat person. Sue me. And I'd want to grind and farm for the best rolls I can get bonuses wise. There's also all the new content they added, specifically the ones that make things so much easier, especially for the late game, such as blueprint upgrades, crossplay, plastic surgery. I'm not kidding. They added a surgery table where you can completely change the passive skills and even the gender of a pal. Got a shit roll of skills on a legendary pal? Poof, there you go. Pokemon would never do anything similar, or at least anything that simple. Even though the grind is still there, there are ways to numb it as you progress through the game. In Pokemon, you got EVs, IVs, whether you want to have a shiny with said Vs. You got Hyper Training at level 100 if you're that lazy. No matter how different the way they do it, grinding in Pokemon is just straight up gambling. You got ways to lower the odds, but that's it. Don't get the wrong idea, I don't hate it, but when you commit 800 hours into a Pokemon game versus when you committed 10 hours, and the way to grind is literally the same thing, no difference other than just lowering the odds, that doesn't feel as rewarding as you think. Another factor that Pokemon distinctly lacks, when you think about it hard enough, is the lack of flexibility. It's much more common to see two Lucarios with the same stats and the same skills in mind. You have to be really creative to use Pokemon outside the box and succeed. It is possible though. My friend Gausma proves it by making teams that hard counter the metas, but it's definitely not a cakewalk. But in Palworld, you can accidentally find a giant shiny chicken with a boost to lightning attacks of all things, and give it a lightning attack skill, cause Lamau. Would it be efficient? I don't know. But the fact that there's no restriction into what skills you can give to a pal no matter what, it says a lot. It's like, you're gonna give me the option, why would I not do it? If a cat lays on my lap, I'm gonna fucking pet it. What I'm getting across is that since its inception, Palworld has definitely evolved to be more than just Pokemon with guns. Well, it still is if you sum it up enough, but it's more than just that. Yes, it's a survival-based building game. There are a dime a dozen. Yes, there's a lot of jank. But that just gives it its own sense of charm, its own identity, saying it's more than a Pokemon. Hell, before 1.0, they already did so much of the game that makes it more original. Last time I left, they introduced raids that you could create in your base to fight and gain pals you wouldn't get anywhere else, as well as extra locales such as the Sakurajima and the Faybreak regions. After that, they added new pals and collabs with different games such as Terraria? Okay, that's a weird choice. Ultra Kill! It also partners itself in bundles with other companies' games, such like Enshrouded and Valheim. How often do you see Nintendo games do that? Shit, you don't even see bundles that much from Nintendo at all nowadays. Unless you count like console bundles and Pokemon bundles. I feel like there are some others out there, but I can't think of any, which honestly kind of proves my point. Now there's
The gigantic fucking tree.
that the game has been teasing since the game's inception, and I have yet to explore it fully since we mainly started fresh. Point 3. I can make an entire video about how important modding is to games that some companies refuse to admit, but to put it simply, having the ability to mod the game how you like, giving you, yourself, an experience that you desire with as simple as a click of a button, or more if it's outside of the Steam Workshop, makes a game last years longer than without. And even if we throw mods out of the equation, Palworld already has a surplus level of customization, from casual playing to hair-pulling levels of challenge. Pokemon doesn't do that kind of shit. It's one difficulty, straight line storytelling, and while that's not a bad thing entirely, lassoing the player breeds opportunity for people to find weaknesses in the game, exploits, cracks in the system, etc. The best kind of customizations are Nuzlockes, but it's a challenge that the players themselves create. And it's so straightforward of a premise that it probably would not take even an hour of Game Freak's time to add. I may be over-exaggerating a bit because I'm no game developer, but I guarantee you if Game Freak did leave an option like that or something similar, they get at least a good level of public publicity. I mean, hell, you can go into the settings in Palworld and you can make it a personal Nuzlocke, where every death matters, literally hardcore mode. It's not rocket science. Though I understand why they don't do it, considering that they have to appease to a more broader demographic in the terms of age. And I know some of the arguments would be like, it's an option. They don't have to do it, or kids these days need to grow up some fucking balls. Counterpoint. This is Pokemon, not Elden Ring. If there's one thing I've learned, trying to find a balance between casual gaming and competitive gaming is a lot harder than it is on paper. And Pokemon has done things that count as a form of a challenge. In more recent titles, they added ways to make the post-game less of a grind. However, these additions made casual gaming side of the Pokemon look like a joke, making it so easy that it creates the urge of people asking for more of a challenge, which is where the root of the argument lies. In Palworld's case, there's a lot more under its belt to keep in mind. Even if most of it is due to the base building portion of the game, outside of that, you still got going out and exploring the world, going into dungeons, finding bosses and pals that catch your eye, managing your weapon, damage, and ammo, utilizing your pal's skills and abilities. There's a lot more to focus on. If I were to bring out a point that's a little off course when it comes to the argument between these two games, the goal isn't to challenge the player, it's to distract the player. Regardless of how, keeping the player distracted in any way, shape, or form keeps their mind from wandering. And when their mind wanders, they think of a lot of things that can be outside of the game, that are negative. Boredom, annoying gameplay loops, existential dread. Palworld keeps the player thinking of something to do, compared to Pokemon where there's kind of not really much to do other than just go from point A to point B and grind in the middle. You keep the player distracted, they don't think of things like wanting a challenge or anything like that. Hell, I cannot tell you how many times I've been playing the game and I just forget to hit record, or forget I'm a human being that needs to eat something. And I think that's one of the big reasons why Palworld sets itself apart from any Pokemon game. Is Palworld going to surpass Pokemon? No. Fuck no. Despite everything, Palworld is nowhere near the capability to surpass the Giant in terms of players. And I'm saying that's most likely the case. If I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be disappointed if that were the case. Pokemon shares a special place in everyone's heart, both young and old, appealing to all ages and demographic. Its community is strong and will certainly never fade. But honestly, that's fine. At the end of the day, no matter what I say, Pokemon has a place in my heart same as all of my friends. But some of us just can't keep up. We don't have the money to burn for a whole console just to play their next generation. And because of that, people usually flock to alternatives to satiate the itch. Back then, Pokemon didn't have that. Aside from like, Temtem? Yeah, I didn't think so. Whether it's Palworld, fan games, or people just straight up emulating the game's new or old, you cannot stop. Palworld is an alternative that people can flock to when they can't keep up with Pokemon. Just like every other game that can be an alternative to insert game. I still try my ass off to get shinies that I want, that I know I'll never get because I never got the safe word when I'm dealing with my desire sensor. I have yet to do a Nuzlocke, and I keep poking at my friend Gazmo because I think it would be funny for my first Nuzlocke experience to be a soul lock with him. If it ain't obvious, I like Pokemon. Its designs, its fan bases, how I myself would dream of how I'd have my own Pokemon adventure. But with how Pokemon is nowadays, that fantasy stays a fantasy. I don't want Pokemon to fail. I want it to be better. Much like what everyone, even the fanboys, want, but choose not to admit it. Generation 10 with Wind and Waves might have the potential to break that shit streak with how it looks and it getting an extra year to cook, which is both a lot of time and at the same time not a lot, so who knows. A business or franchise can't thrive without good competition, and Palworld is now that competition. The game doesn't need to keep player numbers to prove it. It don't need that dumb cycle of update hell that people ingest like crack nowadays. It just needs to be a way to slap some sense into Nintendo saying, hey, you're flying too close to the sun. You're not a god. You're not immortal. Now if you excuse me, I must indulge myself for the next 6 months of my life on much more important matters.